Hi guys, I'm going to try to make a video while driving. I used to do this, but I haven't done it in a while. The quality may not be that great, but I'm just trying to fit it in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the dynamics that may exist in a covert narcissistic relationship, and sort of the two parts, the two characters in that play that are required to make that relationship quote unquote work. It doesn't really work, it's very dysfunctional, but sort of what happens in these relationships. So typically when you're dealing with a covert narcissist, these are people that are there where their narcissism is it can be quite hidden. They are usually higher level at being able to hide the 3 E's that they operate under: the entitlement, the empathy impairment, and the exploitation. They operate in all 3 of those, the 3 E's, but just like an overt narcissist, but theirs is much more under the radar typically. And you could be in a relationship with one of these people for a really, really long time, and you might have no idea what you're actually dealing with. I was in over a 10-year relationship, and I thought the person I was with might have autism spectrum disorder, ASD. That's sort of what I thought. But the more I researched and the more I learned about covert narcissism, that is definitely a more fitting label. So mostly because people who are usually ASD are not like master manipulators, they're not pathological liars, and those are things that all exist on the spectrum with covert narcissism. So it's an interesting dynamic because what you might have in these relationships, what you might see is that the covert narcissist is very often they will find someone who is very strong. In my case, the person that I was with, all their past partners were very strong individuals, very sort of opinionated, strong, individual. They had a strong individuality. And so that's very appealing to covert narcissists, or can be, because they can sort of hide, behind that person. And, what you may see in these relationships is, if you're in one, you might think that you're sort of the one, quote unquote, not exactly running the show, but you might be the one that's like the primary decision maker. You might be the one that, or at least that's what it seems like, you might be the one who appears to be the, sort of more dominant person in the relationship, right? And with coverts, they're really good at manipulating other people to make their decisions for them, and then blaming other people, right? So they're very, very underhanded and crafty and cunning in how they do this with their manipulation. So they typically, it can be very hard for them. Like they won't make decisions. They'll put the decisions on the, other character, the other person in the relationship, typically or often a codependent, or somebody who's like very much a nurturer, very like mothering, or very, in the case of the male codependent, like somebody who's just like a caretaker, a caregiver. These narcissists are very deliberate in who they choose, because they choose somebody who typically is like, going to take care of things for them. And a lot of times these things are like basic needs. The codependent will be the one that's doing like all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping, all the planning, all the vacations. They're the ones that are often they'll be doing like the money management, or all the responsibility of the basic necessities of human life are usually put on that other person. So the narcissist can just detach and do whatever the heck they want in their sort of secret, sketchy life, their double life that they're doing. And so that you'll see that quite often. And the codependent this could be very slow and over time, where the codependent is taking on more and more and more of the responsibility. And it's not like a normal, healthy relationship where there's like joint decision making and people get together as partners and they discuss their common goals and they work towards these common goals, and they sit down and they're like, we have a goal of saving money. How are we going to do this? Let's sit down and make a budget. Or, hey, we have a goal of, taking this great trip. How are we going to plan this? What are we going to do? And, where's the money going to come from? And how are we going to save for it? Like, that just doesn't happen very often in these relationships with narcissists. And, like, we'd like to buy a house. How are we going to go about doing that? This open, honest, authentic, meaningful connection, partnership, and communication just does not happen. And the narcissist will shy away from any sort of like commitment over sort of life things. So often they will, they don't commit and they don't act in sort of a partnership fashion. It's this weird codependent dynamic, and over time you could, if you're the codependent, little by little you're like a frog being boiled in water, and you don't even realize it's happening, where you end up being the only one doing the majority of the work in the relationship. And that goes for the physical work, the life necessity work of cooking and cleaning and caretaking, but it also goes for all of the emotional work. The narcissist is adept at putting all of the emotional work on the codependent. The narcissist doesn't have any feelings, right? So they often get with somebody who, or they're muted in their feelings, and they're often with somebody who has like lots of feelings, lots of expressions of feelings. So that narcissist will project all of their feelings, all of their shit, like onto the codependent. So the codependent ends up having this incredibly heavy burden in relationship with the narcissist of just, doing all of the emotional work, the psychological work, the physical work in the relationship. And real common with the narcissist, covert narcissist specifically, is as long as the codependent is saying, oh, I know this is my problem, let me work on this. Oh, let me work on this. Everything's fine. The narcissist, but as soon as the codependent or the enabler starts calling the narcissist to tasks and wants them to start doing emotional work in the relationship, like being authentic, talking about their feelings, telling the truth, working through conflict, the narcissist cannot stand that. And especially if the codependent is like, hey, starts to get some boundaries and self-respect and self-esteem, and wants that narcissist to be an active participant in the relationship, that is when things can really start to go awry. If the enabler codependent is just going along for all of the narcissist bullshit and taking on all the responsibility, and not questioning it, or not asking for true partnership, or not asking for reciprocity, not asking for open, honest communication, then things can be at sort of homeostasis for a long time. That certainly was the case in my relationship. But the better my self-esteem got, the more I started advocating for normal human decency in my relationship and partnership and equality and egalitarianism, the more detached and completely withdrawn the narcissist that I was with got. And that's very common. Narcissists are very good at picking vulnerable people. They are very good at picking people who are people pleasers. They are very good at finding somebody who is very relational, who's very relationship oriented. They find people who, they often find people who are very concerned about, making relationships good, and they're willing to put in all sorts of work into that relationship. The narcissist loves that because they're willing to do really next to nothing. So they will, they just love putting that burden on someone else, right? They're not willing to do jack shit in relationships, especially when it comes to any sort of emotional work, and especially if that emotional work is asking the narcissist to be honest about their failings or about where they have parts where they need to improve. The narcissist cannot stand the idea that they're anything less than perfect. They absolutely will not, do not take any responsibility for failings of relationships with their partners. Now, sometimes in a manipulative way, a narcissist, when they're talking to the flying monkeys or third parties, they will say to those people, oh, well, I know that I did this thing wrong in the relationship, right? They'll do that sometimes because it's all about performance, because they know that other people will be like, well, yeah, there's two sides to every story. Like, you certainly must have had some part. So the narcissist may take some responsibility when they're talking to the third party, but they will never take the responsibility when they're talking to their partner. They'll never say, yeah, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have manipulated, lied to you, cheated on you, tortured you psychologically. I really shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. Or even just tell the truth. You know, I've been unhappy for some time. I don't like the way you spend money. I don't like the way you do this. They're just so dishonest. The level of duplicity and deception with these narcissists is probably beyond almost anything you've ever experienced. Like it's so deeply rooted. It's so insidious. It's so, just pervasive in these people's lives. Like, these are the most dishonest people you will ever meet. They are not honest with themselves. They probably don't even know. They're in such delusion, denial, and fantasy. They probably don't even know fantasy from reality for themselves. So, you're dealing with somebody who has a high level of pathology in terms of, being able to take any sort of personal responsibility. These are not people that can say, I need to take some personal responsibility. I'm so sorry that I did this thing. I know that it's a failing of mine. I'm really working on that character defect. Because, to narcissists, they don't have any character defects. They are perfect. Any intimation that they're anything less than perfect, they absolutely cannot accept, cannot tolerate. Now, if you are really good about accepting your imperfections and working on them, they love that, because it's fine as long as you're the sick one, as long as you're the one that needs help, you're the one that's going to therapy, you're the one that's willing to, take responsibility. They absolutely love that. And they definitely find people who are prone to taking on the responsibility, more responsibility than is their share, which is very common with codependents. Codependents often think everything's their fault. They work 200% on relationships. They do everything they can to, please people and make other people happy, often at the, their own detriment. So, narcissists are adept at finding people like that. Occasionally you will find a narcissist in a relationship with another narcissist. Usually that's if one is an overt and one is a covert. That can happen. It's more rare, but what they end up doing is validating each other until the whole thing just blows up, or they join together and they can stay together a long time because they spend the rest of their lives character assassinating everyone else in the world and being superior, and everyone else is inferior, and they feed this for each other, which is really toxic. But all of these dynamics are toxic. So really, this is just to give you a little bit of insight into, what you may be dealing with. And if you are a codependent and you are in a relationship with a narcissist, or you were, really for you, a big part of this is doing the work to heal your codependence. I am not putting any of the responsibility of the abuse on you. You are not responsible when other people abuse you. That is not your responsibility. However, you are responsible for learning really strong, clean, healthy boundaries. And that can be, that can be a journey. That can be a lot of work to do, but it's your job to do that so you can see where you end and somebody else begins, and start understanding that you're not responsible for other people. It's not your job to, be somebody else's parent. Unless you have children, and then that's your job. But really, you're not responsible for being a grown-ass man's mother. And, you know, quite often that's very much the dynamic that happens in these narcissistic relationships. You know, a narcissistic male, covert narc who has massive problems with his mother will find, you know, a codependent woman to, you know, sort of take on that role of being his mother, and you will see that quite often. That's certainly the dynamic that I had. So this is sort of a rambling video, but I don't know if this helps you at all to understand that your part as a codependent is you've got to get some help with your boundaries, and you've got to start learning some self-love to know where you begin and somebody else ends, and what's your responsibility and what most certainly is not your responsibility. And it is not your responsibility to take on the emotional and psychological work for the narcissist. It's not your job. They need to take that on themselves, and most will never do it because they have no ability to self-reflect. They're very limited in their introspection, and they don't have very much empathy, if any at all, for other people. So they're on their own shitty path, and they're going to keep doing this stuff over and over again. If you talk to their past relationship partners, this is what they did. It's Groundhog Day. They do this cycle. They repeat it over and over on autoplay. They very rarely ever learn, ever change, ever grow. These are not people that are growth oriented. But you, if you're a codependent, you're watching these videos, you're probably already interested in growth. You're probably already trying to figure out how to never get into one of these dysfunctional, fucked up relationships again. And if so, good for you. There's a lot of hope for you. There's a lot of healing. There's a different way. And that has to do a lot with having really good self-respect and not being with a, you know, as soon as you see the red flags of somebody being a manipulator and a user and abuser and somebody who's exploitative and entitled and thinks that they're better than everyone and superior and, you know, puts other people down, whether it's in an overt or covert fashion, you know, that is not somebody you need to be with. You know, get yourself out of that. And once you start to see the red flags, man, it's almost like you can't stop seeing them. And I've learned, like, I'm so onto it that I've been able to walk away from many potential, you know, people that wanted to be with me where I was like, nope, you're toxic. Nope, bye-bye. No, thank you. I don't want that crap. And also done a lot of work around my codependence to learn some healthy boundaries, and that it's not my job to take care of a grown-ass man as if he is a, you know, 3-year-old child. So I hope this helps you guys. I hope this is, you know, helps you to heal, helps you to see what you were in, helps you to get out of it, helps you to make some different choices for healing, for thriving, for growing, and for your recovery. Thanks so much and have a great day. Bye.